Hello there, welcome to another episode of the Allotment Dram. This is a series of short videos where we sit and talk about different whiskies in the surroundings of our North London allotment. You join me here today on quite a grey, gloomy, slightly drizzly mid-November afternoon, and yeah, not really conducive for doing too much, to be honest, but it's been like that really for the last sort of week to 10 days, so not really been up here much, hence the slight lack of Allotment Dram videos for you. And of course real life, you know, we all have lives outside of this world with things to contend with, but of course I am here to talk about whiskey. I'm back, and what is the whiskey today, I hear you ask? Well, it's quite quirky one actually. It's the Ailsa Bay. So what can I tell you about this? This is actually the first batch. There's now a subsequent batch, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But this is the first batch that we actually have a bottle of, very luckily. And what can I tell you about Ailsa Bay? Well, it's actually a pretty large distillery, you know, one of the larger ones in Scotland, but relatively unknown. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Most of the whiskey that's made there goes into blends, and secondly, it's quite new. So there's not really been too much released as a single malt really. So it was built by William Grant and Sons, and really for their own blending purposes, you know, predominantly to go into Grant's, you know, very famous blended Scotch range, and then the Monkey Shoulder, which is their blended malt range. So they built this pretty large distillery, you know, 12 million litre capacity in 2007. And it's actually within the grounds of their Girvan grain distillery, so it's sort of down there in the town of Girvan on the Ayrshire coast, so about an hour or so south of Glasgow on the train, but right on the coast. And within that there's the Girvan grain single grain distillery, which makes all of their single grain for their blends. And also there's the Hendrick's gin distillery there as well. So quite a little complex that they've got going on. And they actually built it to take a bit of the strain off, particularly Glenfiddich and Balvenie, which are their two big single malt brands. So, you know, obviously they put a boot behind that. They continue to grow and grow and grow and become more popular. So they could use less and less and less of it in things like Grant's and Monkey Shoulder. So they built Ailsa Bay to kind of take a bit of the pressure off. They actually modelled the stills on Balvenie. They're exact replicas of what's at Balvenie, and they can make sort of peated, non-peated, peated spirits. So yeah, really versatile. It can really make whatever they want to make there, that then obviously mature and then go into their blends. So the distillery itself is named after Ailsa Craig, which if you look out, Girvan sits on a big bay, and if you look out you can see sort of Arran in the distance, but the main feature is this dome-shaped rock, which is Ailsa Craig, and it sits in the Firth of, you know, this bay is on the sort of Firth of Clyde. But it's actually home, this dome of rock, Ailsa Craig, is actually home to some of the hardest granite in the world, and some of that actually, it's been mined for, you know, a couple of hundred years from there, and some of it's actually in the cap here, which, you know, I quite like that touch. There's a tiny bit of Ailsa Craig granite there. But also, if you ever watch like Winter Olympics, or you're a fan of winter sports, then this is where they get the granite to make the curling stones, you know, that sport where they have the long sort of stretch of ice and they push the stone out, and then they have those sort of funny brooms and do all that. So yeah, I only ever watch it at the Winter Olympics, if I'm honest, but that's where all the curling stones in the world come from. So another little pub quiz fact for you there. But they also do a thing called micro maturation, which, as far as I know, is the only place that do it. I mean, what the hell does that mean, you're probably asking? Well, micro maturation, what they do is they put the spirit that's destined for Ailsa Bay single malt release into small casks to begin with, virgin oak casks. So it really juices up the liquid. Then after a short period they transfer this, I think it's about 8 or 9 months, they transfer it into the regular size barrels, and predominantly bourbon barrels, 99% of the time it's bourbon barrels. So they put it into the 200 litre or the 225 litre barrels after this initial maturation in these smaller barrels. So yeah, I can't really think of anywhere else doing that. But what can I tell you about this? This is, as I say, the first release. The distillery was built in 2007, but they didn't release this first whiskey until 2016. And it's bottled at 48.9%. And as I say, subsequently they've released one called Sweet Smoke, which is a bit more available. That came out in 2018. This was roughly £55 when it came out. Don't know what it's going for now on auction sites, to be honest, but I think we should have a taste, because as I said, this is a Lowland with a twist, because it's actually peated. So everyone normally thinks of Lowland whiskies as light, delicate, floral, grassy, all of these things, but this is peated and 20 ppm phenol parts per million. So in a sort of mid-range sort of peaty smokiness, and it just shows that actually most of these regional stereotypes in Scotland you can chuck out the window, because now people are making all types of spirits in all types of the different regions. So to get a smoky whiskey from Ailsa Bay and the Lowlands is relatively unheard of. But let's have a quick taste. Lovely sound. This is, because of this granite, I think it's one of the sort of heavier caps that you get. So there we are. Let's pour a little one there. Immediately I've got this smokiness like jumping out of the glass. This sort of mainland peat they use for this. So lovely golden, vibrant colour. Yeah, you've got quite a sweet, gentle smoke. Bit of earthiness. It's also a slight sort of mineralic quality I'm getting. Slightly ionic. But underneath that there's some lovely like honey, golden syrup, vanilla. But let's have a taste. It's quite peppery to start with, and then this smoke hits really quite hard to start with. Quite ashy. Got a sweetness. Quite soft. But then comes this sort of mineralic quality, slightly chalky, slightly flinty, if that makes any sort of sense. This sort of ionic, mineralic feel. Then these other notes start coming through. There's a touch of like green apple there, a lot of vanilla, sort of butterscotch, a bit of golden syrup, and let's just have another taste just to make sure. Really unusual. So obviously you may have had some whiskies that use mainland peat, normally from the Highlands, maybe Speyside. It does have that, but this sort of flinty, chalky quality is really interesting, slightly ashy. It's getting a bit drier now, actually. Now I've had a couple of sips. There's a bit of spice in there as well, like oak, like fresh oak, and a bit of white chocolate as well. All tied up with this smoke and the green apple and the vanilla and the honey. So yeah, really quite delicious. So obviously you may not be able to get this now, but it's been sort of rebranded slightly as this Sweet Smoke, Ailsa Bay Sweet Smoke it's called. So you can certainly find that. Roughly the same price, £55-ish, I think. But yeah, search it out. The liquid's very similar actually. Tasted them side by side and it's very similar, if not the same. But I don't actually technically know if it's the same liquid, but yeah, very, very nice. And yeah, I encourage you to find it, you know, particularly if you want something a little bit different. You know, you like your smoky whiskies, but you want to search out something that's just a little bit, you know, on the quirky sort of side. Yeah, so yeah, well done to William Grants for that, and for, you know, sort of bringing something out. You know, people always like to try whiskies from new distilleries generally, so you know, there's a big scramble for this when it first came out, and the fact that it was a Lowland peated whiskey you know, really turned some heads. But yeah, very, very good. So thanks very much for watching. I'll leave you to get on doing whatever you were doing before you found this video and listen to me for the last 10 minutes. But we'll hope to see you again very soon for another Allotment Dram. From myself and the Ailsa Bay, we will bid you farewell. Bye bye.